everyone, I'm Annissa, and this is a Makerspace and Wells collaboration interview. In this show, we talk about everything and anything art and crypto and the NFT scene with designers and creators alike, otherwise known as non-fungible tokens. And my guest today is no other than Shu Lea Cheang. Shu Lea Cheang is a prominent Taiwanese-American multimedia artist based in Paris, who is globally regarded as one of the pioneers of internet-based new media art. Cheang's multimedia approach is at the interface between film, video, internet-based installation, software interaction, and durational performance. Employing multidisciplinary techniques, Cheang's work explores issues that are in a state of constant flux, including racial relations, the ecological impacts of humans, the ethics of biotechnology, and sexual politics. Cheang seeks to challenge the positions taken by popular media, institutions, and the government. Please enjoy. Hi, Cheang. Thank you so much for joining us. And to start us off, I'd love to hear a little bit about your background and how you first got into crypto and then the NFT art space.
Hello. Yes. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Well, yeah. How I got started on what?
So how you got started, I guess, in crypto, like the cryptocurrency space and then the art space in general.
It seems like, okay, in the art space and by joining Makersplace, I got approached by one of the member of the Makersplace to ask me to join and to use the platform to promote my work or sell my work. And I find it's a very interesting community and a very different approach to the art.
That is amazing. I'd also love to kind of know how you kind of got started in art in the first place as well.
Yeah, I know that would be a longer history or longer story, and it would be a few years ago or 3 decades ago. I got started getting into art in New York City. I studied cinema at NYU, and after graduating from NYU, I was kind of, floating around in the independent film scene, and somehow, accidentally, I got into making a video installation called Color Schemes, which involved 3-channel video set inside 3 washing machines. This first piece of my artwork accidentally also got accepted to be shown at the Whitney Museum as my first solo show. So this was back in 1990. So I kind of got into the art, didn't go through the gallery, but went directly to the museum.
Amazing. And so, you mentioned that, when you first kind of moved to New York, you've been to so many places around the world. And I kind of also know, working in New York City in the 1980s and then relocating to Europe in the 2000s, being so active in the experimental video and the net art scene, how has your pieces kind of like portraying techno body and queer politics evolve over time?
1980s, I lived through New York City for 2 decades, so mostly through the 80s and 90s, counting it almost like 20 years in New York. Of course, it's hard to say that, but usually people get like nostalgia, like the 80s is the best time in New York, or the 90s, something like that. But indeed, for me, it was really apparently a very rock and roll and drugs, sex time in New York. And I was involved in all kinds of jobs, working as a film editor and in the independent film scenes, including being a sound recordist on porno films from Hollywood. So there's all these different kind of job I took on, and meanwhile trying to develop myself as an artist, and mostly still really want to make film. So that was such a process. The 20 years in New York was very intense. Got to know many people. It was a great community. I think at the time we were most flourishing in the Lower East Side or East Village at the time. I think many artists, performers, filmmakers, kind of independent filmmaker scene, kind of coming out from the East Village also. By pretty much around 1997, I sort of moved out of New York, and first stop was actually Tokyo in Japan. And from there, I traveled around the world a bit for one project called Buy One Get One, commissioned by a museum in Tokyo. And since then on, I sort of declare myself as a nomad, a digital nomad, I would call myself, meaning that I just keep traveling. And of course, I do live somewhere, but I am missing a real mailing address, or I'm not having any electricity account assigned to my name. Let's put it that way. So I sort of counted my life as a digital nomad for 10 years until I settled in Paris by 2004.
That's interesting. Living in Paris and all that, has that affected your work, the culture there and the community?
I sort of take Paris as a base, but maybe not so much just in Paris or France, but actually the whole Europe, because if we talk about Euro, EU or Europe, it's actually every country is quite connected. So I have a very strong network. For example, I have a very strong queer community performance network that I make film with in Berlin. In Paris, it's more smaller scale. But Berlin is really my base for making films. I have a great producer there. So the fact that I actually was able to produce my film in Berlin, living in Paris, at the same time connected to many different networks in different cities. But mostly the network that I'm familiar with and feel very close to. So I was able to approach, making many different kinds of work, either on ecology or queer performance, and but it's a very pan-European kind of lifestyle, I would say.
I see. And I feel like like going back to the places that you've been in and so forth. I remember you were speaking about Japan and Tokyo. And I know, from doing a little bit of research, with the whole Locker Baby project that you did in 2001 and 2012, I know that one of the installations, because there were three different installments, and one of them, when I saw on YouTube, was that people or visitors were able to ride in a spinning cup with a baby.
Yes.
And every time someone touched the baby would react to it. And when I saw it, I just went, "Oh my God, what is this?" And I just went, I wish I was there. But what kind of goes on backstage, and and how do people initially react to your work that you've observed?
Actually, the Locker Baby project started in 2001, and indeed that was the time I was in in Tokyo. I was on an artist in residency, so living in Tokyo. In Tokyo, if you are aware, is that actually almost every train station have many lockers, right? It's like there's always a locker installation. Somehow you never seen this kind of large scale locker, coin locker installation other than in almost all the subway exit entrance in Tokyo or throughout Japan. And then, of course, there was a novel called Coin Locker Baby by Murakami also. So the whole concept of coin locker is almost like it actually contains many different symbols. One is about the baby being discarded in coin locker during the Second World War. once a lot of women at the time have a baby with the American military, and they cannot keep the baby, so they have to discard the baby, so they just put the babies into the lockers. So that's one, sort of origin of the coin locker baby in the novel. At the same time, it does contain all these particular, like what gets put inside the coin lockers. My coin locker baby project actually started with around 2001. There was a lot of scientific research or medical research or study about making clone babies. The clone babies, this was right after the clone lamb or Dolly Polly clone lamb. And so it was actually not considered legal to make human clones, right? Until now, I think it's still not, supposedly not legal, but there was a kind of rumor that, actually the scientists have already, creating the clones, the babies, and so the clone babies among us, and I think if we think about a lot of science fiction, there's always the fear for clones, for replicants, so this kind of human and artificial intelligence and scientific advancement, biotechnology, we always have such an ambivalent sort of relationship with all these technical advancements, so the Locker Baby project actually came from this idea of keeping the secret in coin lockers, including making the clone baby out of the coin lockers. Yeah. So it was conceived in 3 parts, and the first part was called Baby Play, which I use a kind of footboard as an installation, and then Baby Love was a teacup, 6 huge teacups. I think they are like 170 centimeter in diameter, and the last piece was Baby Work. At first, I thought that I want to do like a 3 parts installation in 3 years, but it took me 11 years to finish it. So it was, dated 2001 to 2012. The particular Baby Love, all the 3 parts are actually based on the theme that the locker baby, or the clone locker baby, grown out of the locker produced by a biotechnology company, actually holds the secret of humans. The kind of emotion, memory, data of human are deposited into the coin locker babies. So somehow through the art installation, people have to interface or interact with the clone baby in order to retrieve the memory and emotion. So the Baby Love is actually through riding on the teacups, sort of like these kind of playground teacup rides, that you can actually download the love songs that people uploaded, and play back. And by driving the teacups, you actually is doing some sort of jamming and kind of DJing. All the love song kind of got jamming together. So technically it was a quite complicated installation, also involved Wi-Fi network to keep downloading love songs from the internet and being jammed by driving the wheels, back and forth, and you actually switching songs back and forth, that kind of thing. So yeah, complicated one.
Yeah, I mean, I love that there's this whole storyline to it as well, with the 3 installations and how it connects. It's a very, very complex, you're right, it's a very, very complex and like concept. I'd love to know kind of how people, like when they first got into the teacup, or when they first, even reacted with the football field, how did people react, or that you observed?
It was this is probably my most popular work, I must say, throughout all my career. I think this, the baby locker baby project series, the 3 parts are probably most popular because they really create such a easy, sort of easy access interface with people. And of course, people can get on the the teacup and dry around, which is already quite magical. And particularly thinking that it was always installed in kind of museum settings. So for example, it was shown actually at San Jose in 01 Festival in 2016. 2006 at the time, and that was installed in the City Hall in San Jose. So, all the neighborhood kids were able to come and really enjoy it. And even, not only kids, but the older people, one time I think we see like a whole Chinese community, older community members, they all came in and they all get on the teacups and really have a lot of fun. The teacup does bump into each other, but when they bump into each other, it makes a kind of sound exchange, and then they kind of separate again, So it really, I think it's just more about that, how it was set in such a kind of, sort of art circuit that makes it so different, So people usually quite not so sure, like, is this art or it's just a playground? But throughout playing with it, that maybe they got something through, something out of it. Yeah.
I think it's interesting that you brought up the point, it's like when people kind of go in these bumper cars and they go, this is a lot of fun. I'm jamming to music. I have this baby next to me, I'm bumping into people. So it's kind of like, yeah, you're right. It's people are like, is this an experience or is this art? And this leads me to my next question, how do you kind of determine what is art? And I'd love to hear some insights from that as well.
Well, I'm a very conceptual artist, I would say. So first I would write the concept. And I think if the concept goes through, then it's art, maybe. I think usually, in my work, I am based on certain concept to pursue, and also to make an art project or an art piece. And also because of the concept, I would decide which kind of medium I want to use. So, for example, you talk about my kind of many different ways of making art, including film, video installation, network installation, cybernetic installation, or making into a collaborative performance, or just purely on the internet, the net art project. So it really all depends on what kind of subject matter or what kind of concept I want to broadcast through, and then to decide which medium I should be using.
Right. That's amazing. And with the concept, being like concept art and all that, I'd love to kind of lead it into another project that you did. You were the first female artist to represent Taiwan in a solo exhibition at the Venice Biennale. In an interview with Hyperallergetic in 2019, it was iterated that most of your work was political, and that life is political in itself, and that it was particularly prominent in the installation at the Palazzo de Pozzoni, displayed in a rotating inverted surveillance tower, where there was digital surveillance cameras watching you from that tall tower as you were like seeing the work, collecting your visual data. I would love to know a bit more about the project and where you get that inspiration from, like with the concept and the method on how you showcase it.
This is a very complicated piece. Actually, I have not really living in Taiwan since I left the country, a certain age. I got called on to say to me that I got nominated and selected to represent Taiwan for the Venice Biennial. So it was actually more a commission. After being selected, and I remember the pavilion in Taiwan pavilion in Venice is always set in Palazzo Prigioni, which is right at San Marcos. It's actually it's a 17th century prison, old prison piece, old prison, and right now it became a kind of art space. Sometimes they have some shows, or sometimes they hold events there. I really, one thing I want to do is actually if I'm doing a solo exhibition at this place, my first thought would be to track down the history of its prison past. And by accidentally, through different research, I find out that Casanova, the famous sort of lover Casanova, was actually Giovanni Casanova was actually imprisoned there back in the 18th century. So it kind of came out for me about the reason that Casanova was imprisoned in Prigioni was never clear. What was the crime he committed was never clear. Some people would say, oh, because he was having too much sex with all the rich people's daughter, or he actually offended the religion, So I got into really quite interested about, particularly about the people, because of the gender or sexual difference or deviance, that would be imprisoned, So there was so many cases of such, If we remember also a very famous case of Marquis de Sade, who at the end, if you read about the 100 days of Sodom, but at the same time, Marquis de Sade was in prison for almost 30 years in different prisons in France because of his writing on these kind of sort of considered to be obscene sexual behavior. There was, once I decided to really doing research on different criminal case because of sexual difference or gender preference and got prison, it became quite a lot of cases to research, and finally I selected 10 cases. And also because I have done a sort of prison scene before in my other project called Brenton for the Guggenheim Museum, and in that piece I also researched into this particular prison system called Panopticon. The Panopticon prison, again, is all about surveillance. If we look at the way that the Panopticon was constructed, was a kind of old surveillance prison. So you basically have a central tower in the middle of the prison cells, and if the guardian sitting on this particular tower, that you actually would see the whole surrounding prison. So it is actually, again, going back to this concept of the Panopticon cells, and to think about the kind of old surveillance society that we live in now, right? So in a certain way, if we consider Panopticon as a physical prison built in the 18th century by sort of designed by Jeremy Bentham in the 18th century, and then in this 21st century, if we look at our control society, then we must say that we also live in a pretty much a surveillance society. Consider China has 200 million surveillance camera, kind of Skynet that able to survey all of its citizens. And of course, today's Panopticon is totally building on data surveillance. So you have all this data collection, you have this digital surveillance. So I call it the digital Panopticon we live in today. So the piece actually coming from all these different, so you have this prison structure, then you have the cases about sexual crimes, and then my point at the end, the title called 3x3x6 is actually referring to a kind of 9 square meter prison cell that is that is considered the highest security prison cell, which meaning a prison cell can be 3x3, equal to 9 square meter, or 2.5 by by how do you count that? Whatever that makes up 9 square meter, but 6 actually refer to, in this kind of 9 square meter prison usually come with 6 surveillance camera. Yeah. So if we broaden it to the current society, we cannot avoid any surveillance camera in every street corner these days, isn't it? So it's there's quite a lot of different thinking going to the piece, and at the end, I was able to use kind of 4 gallery space of the whole prigione space. So in each room, there's a different installation to carry out all these concepts.
I think this is brilliant. I mean, I never even thought of that before, and it's terrifying. The Pantheon, like it's insane. And when I was doing the image search just now, and I just saw this image of Facebook and set in the middle as the guard tower. And you're right, it's especially what they're doing with WhatsApp now. It's insane. And so it's incredibly right.
Yeah, I think we are so, I think this is a question. Like, we are so used to being surveyed. We are so used to our data being, being used, being taken. I mean, we are willingly donating our data to Facebook, to any kind of social platform. We sign our release, say like, yes, we agree, that you can use all my data. So this is kind of, we make this trade, isn't it? We make the trade with the commercial companies so that we can have these kind of social network, social platform. At the same time, we're just so used to it, right? We need to use it. We're so used to it. We are willingly submitting ourselves to be surveyed. Let's put it that way, right?
It's crazy that now it's becoming voluntary. And it's tricking people into making it voluntary. It's genius, but also, of course, terrifying.
Yeah.
And so, I remember you mentioned the Brendan piece, which was actually a piece that fascinated me a lot, because it was a 1-year narrative project which explored the issues of gender fusion and technobody in both the public space and the cyberspace, and explored what you called the digi-gender social body, which is like the online social body, such as an avatar, which is interesting because I'm using an avatar as a site of potential violence, control, liberation, gender-based oppression in the seemingly liberatory context of the net. So basically, the narrative of the websites follows 3 parts: the big doll, the road trip, the theatricum, and the anatonicum, and of course, the panopticon, and like in memorial of Brendan Tina. So I'm going to be showing people the website right now so that people can walk through this journey or the story or the roadmap with me. But I'd love for you to kind of walk us through together kind of the symbols that you use, like the mechanic me, the pills, and the MOOs or the moos.
Okay, that's another big piece to talk about. The website is actually brendan.guggenheim.org. It was done in 1998 to 1999 for the 1-year duration. At that time was quite early of the net art. I got involved in net art probably around 1995. So by 1998, I was able to get this commission from the Guggenheim Museum to make this work. Of course, for me, at one time, for me, it's like actually also kind of wrap up the 1990s. It's interesting that you do use the word avatar in a certain way, almost like nobody. I'm not so sure if we are using the word avatar now, but I still use it. Because the 1990s is probably the time of the avatar time, and also the kind of chat line, of course here now we do this chat all the time. At that time, I think, you do chat, you have this kind of chat platform, and then there was always this kind of gender debates, if you choose a male gender or female gender to represent you through an avatar, that you could be treated totally different, Yes, I was also got into the Moo. Moo, MOO, actually represent another kind of social platform, a bit, like what we are doing right now is a different kind of moon in a way, right? It's just setting up a kind of social space or the media space, which is totally virtual. And then you start building your own characters into it. You start building a community around you. You start interact with this community. There will be different way of interaction, different way of trolling, and basically, people can get into trouble. The Brandon Project actually also based on one particular story written by Julian Dibble at the time in Village Voice called a rape in cyberspace that happened in the moon. And again, if we speak about what is a rape in cyberspace, I think people people still wonder about is verbal can be physical, is a kind of, this kind of virtual rape, is that real? And that was a time really debating about this. It's like, here you are, you are witnessing, you are in a virtual social environment, you're witnessing someone getting raped, calling for help, and everybody, the whole virtual community in that particular room kind of just watching it and let it happen. So you doubt, is this really a rape? We can still debate it, right? But right. So it really, so this was, for me, this was also very 90s, I think maybe right now we still struggle with the same issues, but at the time it's almost like this whole, the real body, virtual body. It's like, would the real body stand up, please? Which is the real body, right? Brandon actually taken from the murder of Brandon Tina, the transgender being from Nebraska, being raped and murdered in 1993 on the New Year's Eve by basically by his friends, people who he hang out with, that find out that he's actually a female anatomy body, has a female anatomy body. So they actually rape him and finally murder him along with another friend. It was a tremendous case, of course. So here you are with a physical body trying to change gender and to encounter the fate of being raped and murdered. So I'm really taking Brandon up to the cyberspace, and consider in the cyberspace, you have this kind of more like a gender fusion, meaning like, people would say, oh, in cyberspace, you're free. You can be man or woman. We don't really have any racial or gender binary anymore. You could be anything. However, is it true? No, because by the way, how you use your gender pronoun, by the way, how you name your avatar, which handle you take in, you could have a totally different treatment, isn't it? So it was really a piece to explore all these issues, including the violence, including the crime committed for, basically, a very non-tolerable society. People cannot tolerate that you being different, you being gender diversity, all these kind of things. I think in a certain way, a lot of my work still dealing with this kind of issue, being different, being diverse, being non-confined, being non-binary. All these can become an issue of being attacked and being discriminated against. So maybe a lot of my work still struggle with a lot of these kind of social, political conditions that we are facing still every day. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I love that the fact you brought out about the avatars. I think especially during this pandemic, everyone's just facing their streams, and all you can see, especially if people aren't showing face, is just an avatar, and how you kind of equate their personality, their emotions, and so forth. It's just based on that, that whatever avatar they choose. They put so much weight into it because they don't know who it is behind the screen.
Okay, yeah, I know. I think it's probably true, and and I consider Currently we all wear masks, which is another big disguise almost, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%.
Mm.
And I love that, you said about, your work kind of deals with the discrimination that happens. And, something that you said in an interview about when you first got to New York really resonated with me. And was kind of like how you were more concerned about the certain kinds of racial discrimination or stereotypes of being an Asian woman, and that there were many kinds of instead there were actually, or you found out that there were actually many kinds of these quote unquote fantasies about Asian women. And like I said, I love that you brought this point up, because as an Asian woman myself, I feel like many people kind of undermine the attempts the Asian communities try to defy the stereotype, or they try to ignore it. And it's not actually addressed that much. And because of mainstream media, it's much harder to do so as well, to get rid of that or move away from that stereotype. So as artists, as this collective community, what do you think we can do to move away from that stereotype?
You're still struggling with it. I hope that we got rid of that. I know. I like to think that we are out of this mess.
Yeah.
I am still, yes, indeed. I think being treated with different look. You being always have to prove you are someone with certain intelligence. You can speak. That kind of thing is still a daily struggle, isn't it? I would not say how to fight it. I think it's almost like to kind of, for me, my strategy is almost to kind of live about it, right? So how could I be beyond being treated this way? So to bring my head high up, to just look down upon all these people who discriminate against me. I think that finally would be my strategy, rather than succumb to, these kind of oppositional, say, I had to fight it. It's more like, hey, it's your lose, if you don't even know me or what I'm standing for. You don't even try to understand me, that kind of sense. And in order to cross over for people to understand you, of course, there's always a struggle. At the same time, you cannot even deal with such a stupidity. That's how I feel. Sometimes you're just like, fuck it. I'm just not gonna deal with your stupidity.
Oh my God. No, I think that's 100%. Yeah.
I think that would be my final way of dealing with it. Just laugh it away. I think actually this one particular incident, or not incident, the real account really hurt me so much. Remember last year, in the beginning of the pandemic, maybe around January, February, so all the Asian people start wearing a mask in New York, in America, right? So they got beaten up, right? You must heard so many of these stories, particularly Asian people. A friend of mine was in New York City. She was telling me she got pushed down on the street. Actually, I don't even think she was wearing a mask, but the Asian people are the first people to wear the mask, also because somehow in the Asian country, Taiwan, Japan included, people are so accustomed to wear the mask somehow, maybe because of a kind of cautious or politeness. If someone feel like they have a cold, they put on the mask when they go out immediately. If you go onto the subway in Tokyo, you see many people wear the mask. This was totally before pandemic. So in the beginning of the pandemic, you see all these Asian people wearing the mask and being condemned, being, really, there was a lot of racial hatred, a lot of incidents happen of the being beaten up, right? So finally, here now, we have a law. In France, it's actually a law to you have to wear the mask, otherwise you get a fine. right? America is not doing that, but here it's actually a must. You really see police around the street catching people not wearing the mask to give
Yeah.
you a ticket,
Yeah.
So yeah, so I always think what a change, from being Asian, being discriminated against for wearing a mask to now to say, hey, wearing a mask really help. Everybody wears it. It's such a
Mm,
process. Yeah.
yeah. No, I think I've, definitely witnessed that distinction and the cultural differences, like with face masks. Because like you said, in Asia, almost everyone, like if you just have a cold, a common cold, wearing a face mask is so almost second nature to you.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
crazy.
it's really also the respect for others, right? It's like I don't want to
Yeah.
contaminate you,
Mm,
even now isn't like, the whole thing about, like when America, the presidency refused to wear a mask. It's like totally had no respect to others,
yeah.
right? Because we live
Hmm.
in a community, we are, interfacing with everybody. So this kind of mutual respect to wear a mask, actually. Yeah.
Exactly. I agree with that completely. And something else that I also kind of wanted to touch on, which also kind of has to do with the work that you're doing and kind of the message that you're trying to send out. Basically, like with your movie, Fluido, on AIDS and HIV, you mentioned that it was felt that a lot of the times the governments have been associated with the pharmaceutical industry, and that they were like controlling the whole market and with the release of drugs. And I think this is especially prominent in today's society, especially in the U.S., where there's this ingrained industrial structures deep rooted in the country that controls the narrative of what is being absorbed by the public. So like my question to you is like, what are some of the kind of practical effects you have observed in people after experiencing these performative pieces? We're going to those issues. Like, is there any, I guess, transformative like thinking or anything like that after seeing these like new media types regarding those
Um,
issues?
okay. Well, Who is Zero, I call it Who is Zero, was conceived sort of, it was a film, also a science fiction film. I tend to, when I make film, particularly, usually tend to be science fiction. Um, it actually did come out from my experience of living in New York throughout the 80s, with AIDS epidemic, and so many of my friends died. And I think, at the time in New York, many artists and performers got hit very hard with the AIDS crisis. And at the end, if you think about how the crisis escalates, actually have a lot to do with the drugs is not being distributed. Whatever the federal agency doesn't want to release the drugs. They say for safety reason, but it's actually, I really do believe, there was a lot of pharmaceutical industry meddle into the profit business about, when to release the drugs so that we can get the biggest profit. That's a, well, okay, you can say conspiracy theory. um, if we look at today, right now we are in the middle of this pandemic. You look at the recent, supposedly the release of the vaccine, right? Again, we are in this kind of being controlled by pharmaceutical industry about when to release the vaccine for the people who need it most. So who get to have the vaccine first, and all these kind of issue. Again, we are in that kind of government and pharmaceutical connected. So we are relying on the pharmaceutical company to research on the drugs to provide the solution. At the same time, once the research is done, they can control the market. Yeah, so this is really, I actually tend to want to approach these issues in many of my work, including the film that I'm working on now called Yuki. It's also, at the end, it's really also about the biotechnology, how the advance of biotechnology, how the it's actually a genome corporation is able to control human genome, including the modification of the DNA, all kinds of virus, bacteria manipulation, intervention into human body, then including the whole data, our body data being controlled or being, sending to this big data, which is actually, again, we no longer have access to. A lot of these issues, I think I'm still dealing with in the current film that I'm developing called Yuki. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And after listening to the interview that you did with Makerspace, I know that the Yuki project is also linked to the Red Pill drop that you're going to be doing recently. So upcoming. So I'm super excited for that. Yeah, I mean, even the burrito, like the films, it's fascinating. And like even with like I think it was UKI, if I
Yuki,
yes,
I
and
just call
it's
it Yuki.
fascinating. Yeah, exactly, and it's amazing. And so yeah, I think that especially now, like I think about 2% of the of the US and the UK is being vaccinated right now, and it's like how I say, it's like they wouldn't vaccinate that many people if it wasn't the hierarchy of the world, like the richest people like testing them out first. Like so it's a different time and it's crazy.
Yeah, I think, I actually was just trying to study the system in France, that the distribution of vaccine, who gets it, and, again, the whole world's pharmaceutical industry is competing with the market, isn't it?
Right.
The vaccine market, then the whole different country where if they produce their own, if they don't produce their own, they have to rely on the country to supply it. And actually the outcry here in France is like, why does France not have its own vaccine? There's no pharmaceutical industry producing the vaccine now, so the French are actually relying on other country to provide, so then it of course is a question of the cost, and so it's a question of who gets the shots first. Yeah,
it's insane. And I mean it's really like I love like studying it, and I love to see what comes out of it. And yeah, I love to see the I think everyone is as well excited to see the product whenever it launches. And so yeah, and so and so I kind of want to go to like the net, like in the edition you mentioned that because the net has crashed, you moved on to invent the bionet, where you find viral love and hacks in the biotech in your current cycle of work. So I kind of wanted to know, what did the dot-com bubble kind of mean to you in the past, and the net crash mean to you for the future, or even currently in your art?
Well, for me, I consider the internet is pretty much occupied territory right now. It's certainly, whenever you get on the net, you first have to sign up, kind of sign away your rights, right? You have to, how many times you have to say, okay, I accept the cookies. I accept all my data being used by you. Whatever you want, whatever the release right you want to, even by reading the newspaper page, either I get to subscribe it for $1 a month, or I again, you sort of every day you kind of navigating the net is about signing away your rights, and it's about being tracked down. Every time you make a reservation, you search something, then you are followed, so there's a cookie, there's a whole tracking devices that is following you. So it's totally a lost ground for me, like, wow, okay, we are still using the net, at the same time, I have always since 2003 been prepared for a kind of using a kind of sort of alternate, or building a small network, what we call peer-to-peer network or mesh network, creating different kind of network. I think network is one of the big topic in my work in terms of what kind of network I want to be connected. And I consider myself also a network artist or a networker. A lot of my work is about connecting people, making collaboration. The network can be small, can be large. For example, I also have another project called Mycelium Network Society, trying to connect all the people, working with the mycelium mushroom, but again, like we can say mycelium is the nature's network. So there's many different kind of net that we can talk about. The Yuki project considered the bionet is actually an evil bionet. It's actually totally manipulated by this big genome corporation who built the bionet in order to grab the data, grab the body data from the people that sign on to the net. While the people don't sign on, they are forced into this bionet, and the genome corporation actually could grab the data through this bionet construct and using the data to make profit. Right, this is a very common practice, in our current next situation. Yeah,
it's crazy because I just like have an apple a day and the doctor goes away. It's kind of now it's like one internet a day, signing your privacy away.
Totally.
Kind of, so it's interesting, and like we mentioned before, it's like it's voluntary as well. Like the terms of service and stuff like that, like it's so long, nobody even bothers to read them because they just think that what, like the internet's good, everyone's just trying to protect me, and so like I'm just going to tick whatever because I'm too lazy to read through all of it, and that's exactly what they want you to do.
Yeah. I one time I make a work and I actually joke about this, like by the time you reach 20 page later and click it, I think in the early times that you actually have to at least scan through. Actually have to scan through these 20 pages, and at the end you click to say I agree. Nowadays, it's simplified. You say, oh, by signing on, you agree. So it's
exactly. Agree to what?
It's actually you actually got much simplified. I know. So in a certain way, you talk about this. It's sort of. It's in a very kind of strange state, at the same time we are so used to it, or we succumb ourselves to it, Yeah.
It's crazy, and I really hope that this piece of work is going to bring more awareness to that, so that people are more careful about their privacy, because that's very important, especially what they're doing.
Yeah. I think it's we should still be aware of what we are bargaining for. Let's put it that way. I mean, I think there's actually in terms of social media, in terms of small network we are building, sometimes we do use different platform. We were able to kind of protect ourselves somehow. We can build communities there. That's the way that we still have to live in, but hopefully, we should still be aware.
Yeah, I agree completely. And like going to this, like some of the pieces that you made previously, with like the Yuki virus rising, and this piece, I watched through it and I felt so many emotions just flow through me the whole time because I had no idea what was going to happen next. It was just I saw a bull. I saw a blue, like a green bull. There were like red blood pellets everywhere, but it was so fascinating. I couldn't keep my eyes off it. Like I would love to, I guess, and I know that maybe this is a piece that maybe I need to find the meaning of myself, but I would love to get to know what the background or the story for this piece is.
Yeah, but actually, Yuki virus rising is really from the film. The film that I'm developing. So I start building this kind of 3D e-trashscape, and I start building this character based on the character from IKU called Reiko. And who went through several different transformations to find herself back. And I'm actually, working on the feature film script. So I have a first draft of feature film script. I'm still doing fundraising for the film. But the Yuki virus rising is more of a kind of sketch for the film, So it actually presents you a landscape that I want to present in terms of electronic trash landscape. At the same time, you had this character going through it, trying to sort of reboot herself back to existence. But this is all part of a much, a feature film script, science fiction. I called it the viral old reality cinema that I have been developing since 2017, when I first got a grant in France, a cinema grant in France, and last year I got a Guggenheim Fellowship towards the production of the film. I'm really hoping that I can make this film this year and have the film released by 2022. It is really quite connected to the viral condition we're in now. The film is totally about virus, but it was, again, Yuki was a concept that I conceived in 2009. So it's kind of, a lot of my work takes a long time to develop. And somehow I always have to see if it's still relevant, it's still relevant to make this film now. And at the same time, when I start really working on the script last year, during the confinement in Paris, I really realized the urgency of making this movie. And, I really have to devote myself a lot of time or totally focus on trying to get the film made this year.
Right. With these films, like you mentioned that, like, basically, if you have to make sure that it's so relevant in the time. So, how do you kind of, like, for example, if you made a piece, have you made any pieces in the past that, you made and then it wasn't relevant, or the topic wasn't relevant anymore? And so what did you do to kind of have to adapt to that situation?
Oh, yeah, actually, I think, because a lot of concept I have it took a long time to make. For example, we talk about the movie Full Zero. Actually, when I first have the concept for that movie was 2000, and it took me 17 years to have the film released, right? So the film Full Zero was released in 2017 in Berlin Film Festival, Berlinale, and I remember, the fact that I want to make this film. I couldn't find the money to make this film. I went through how to present this film in different format, making it into performance, making it into a different way of performing. Even I make a website, with the same concept in a different way. But, at the end, I got to make the film. Of course, when I start really writing the script for the film in 2014, that's when I finally find a producer who is willing to produce the film. But with a very low budget, so I have to rewrite the script in a way. I really do feel it's still relevant, although in writing the script, of course, I have to changing something, adapting something, that's for sure. For example, the Yuki concept was also conceived, say, in 2009. So when I start really, and at that time, I didn't think that it could be a feature film, because I don't think I could ever raise the money for such a film. So I started making it into a performance, into a game. And finally, in 2017, I was able to get a grant to work on the piece, the concept, as a feature film idea. And so at the moment, to develop it into a feature film in writing the script, I actually, particularly at this pandemic time, I actually had to take in a lot of these viral conditions into the film. And for me, and then consider the kind of urgency of feeling like our body has been occupied, being held hostage. All this is really relevant. I think the siege of the COVID, we have been, under siege of this virus, right? And but the solution to our body being under siege is that because the government, the pharmaceutical, still have a way to control this situation, right? So depending on different politics, different government policy, depending on how government working with pharmaceutical, it's all affect how we are being affected by the pandemic. Are we all gonna get out of this? It's a really big question now, isn't it?
Yeah. And especially, with a new mutation, I mean, I feel like this piece is especially interesting because you don't know what's going to happen with this pandemic. Like anything could happen any day. Like, especially nobody expected another mutation and now to spread over the world just right when they found the vaccine. So, it's like, everyone's just finding the news at this like same time. So like, I'm just picturing you just going, oh my gosh, now I need to put this in the film because there's so much going on,
Yeah, the drama unfolds,
Yes. It really is a drama, 100%.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I think 2021 we already, started with quite a drama. First, you have the virus variation, you have the Congress takeover. What's happening today at the Congress at impeach. It's really it's quite striking, like how we enter 2021. I was like, I was actually just hiding out in the mountain a bit, and then coming back to Paris, I was like, oh God, I can't accept this. What's happening,
It's like living off the grid for a little bit and then coming back and just going, oh my gosh, this is chaos. Better get back to the mountains,
I know. What a chaos.
Yes.
Oh God, I don't even want to walk out, I got invited to go to a gallery on Saturday. Funny thing, it just occurred to me. So I got invited to go to have a private view in the gallery in Paris this Saturday. And I say to the curator, I say, I am thinking if I should really try hard to step out of my space, try hard to step out of my house. It's like, oh God, what a decision to be made, But this is really the kind of daily sort of thinking, isn't it? Yeah.
It's a crisis. It's a daily crisis, isn't it?
Isn't it? It's amazing that we're not going crazy. I think it's like, for me actually to be keeping in a kind of sanity and to actually make sure all our friends or the people around us are able to keep the sanity, that it's really fragile. I think we're quite fragile at the moment, and we need to support each other. So I'm very happy to have met you, and thank you for inviting me to this community.
Of course. And again, like, it's been an amazing journey having you. I hope that everyone enjoys, the stream just as much as I did. I learned so much and it's incredibly eye-opening. For my last question to you, I would love to ask you one final question. So which piece, if you had to choose one single piece that you've done, which would be the most memorable for you?
Oh my God, don't.
I know. I'm so sorry. I had to ask you. I'm so sorry.
This is like, there was another question that always drives me crazy. Is like people say, what is your favorite film? Like, what is your favorite film, favorite director?
It's like choosing your favorite child.
I know. It's really hard to say, Anyway, let me put it this way. Maybe every time I do a project, every time I do a new project, I always think it's a new challenge. Yeah. So I never do repeat the same way of making a piece. So for example, right now I had to make Yuki as a film, but I'm actually
Mhm.
trying to get into like doing like motion tracking, avatar building, and 3D landscaping, these kind of technology, which I actually had to study quite a bit, and I had to
Right.
learn how to somehow make it happen. I think I have certain enough knowledge, but I don't really know enough. So I'm still in the research process. Of course, I have done quite a few different approach to it, but still, in terms of how to make this into a feature film, and also with a very, considerably very little budget, how to make it. So again, Yuki became my biggest challenge at the moment. So, again, when I make Brandon, I thought, oh shit, I break the record. I got commissioned by the Guggenheim Museum to make a net art piece, right? So that
Mhm.
was such a,
Mhm.
a great piece for me to making that. I got connected with all these different queer communities throughout the country and also internationally. That was a highlight of my life, in a way. But then again, since Brandon, I keep making different work, and each work I think is always a challenge. So whenever I make a new work, it's a challenge. Then it became very incredible. 3x3x6, able to work with the curator Paul B. Preciado, who I admired and who also loves me. And so, like,
Mhm.
such a kind of collaboration, it was tremendous. It was also a tremendous production, very intense production, very intense working with a curator of such intelligence. And so it was tremendous work. And to speak about my film Fui Zero, released in 2017 after 17 years. Every time I make a public presentation, I say, wow, this film take me, 17 years to make. So it's always like, these kind of each film, each work has such a different story, I guess, So again, I would say, for me right now to be in the launch of pre-production of Yuki, and it really present to me again a big challenge, and so maybe it will become my most memorable work, right?
Yeah, I
So
definitely agree with that, and that's amazing.
yeah, so I guess the answer will be my new work will always be the most memorable. How's that to answer your question?
That is a beautiful answer, and yes, beautiful answer. It's a conundrum. I mean, I get it. It's a conundrum. I'm sorry I
Yeah,
asked it, but I had to. I just had
I
to.
know, I know.
Um,
No problem, no problem, no problem. I understand. Yeah.
oh my gosh.
Uh,
Anyways, it's been an absolute pleasure having you. I
I
was laughing this
know,
whole time.
fantastic. Yeah, very
Oh
nice
my
meeting
gosh.
you. Yeah,
Yes,
fantastic.
likewise,
Yeah.
likewise.
Okay
And
then.
again, I just posted all of Shu Lea's social media channels, Wikipedia and Makerspace. Remember to check out her drop for the Red Pill on Thursday, 3:30 PST. Remember to check her out. And yeah, again, have an amazing day. Stay sane, stay safe,
Thank you.
and have an amazing
Thank
day.
you.
Right.
Thank
Take
you,
care.
Alicia.
See you.
Bye bye now. Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.